All right, welcome back to the Dog Dish. The week two of the trials have just concluded, and now we've got to wait 2 more weeks for the official NRL season to kick off. But there's plenty of footy to talk about until that stage. You may have noticed I've got a new setup if you're watching on YouTube, a bit more cozy, a bit more aesthetically pleasing. But let's get into a trial game review, starting with Eels versus Knights. So the Eels this was the first game of the second week of preseason. Bit confusing there. It was like the Friday night game. It was between the Eels and the Knights, and the Eels won that game 36-14. It was our first look at Ponga at 5'8", and as much as I hate to say it, hopefully our last look at Ponga at 5'8". Now, obviously, it won't be our last look. He'll definitely get more cracks at that 5'8" jersey, but defensively, he was a bit ordinary and it wasn't great, especially if you're a Knights fan. You're probably watching that thinking, what on earth is happening at my club? But I'm not a Knights fan, so I'm not thinking that. Let's take a look at the Eels first, who, as I said, they won 36-14. They actually played Zach Sini and Isaac Lumi in this game, which I found a bit surprising, but shout out to both of them. They both, once again, the same as the first week, they both had really good games, and it's showing what Parramatta's depth is actually like. And their depth is actually quite impressive, I thought, at least. I've got nothing against their depth. And in fact, I'm very impressed with how good their depth is, because coming into the trial games, I didn't actually realize just how much depth they had there. And you look at all the players they lost, like your Papali'is, your Marnies, they're looking really good, especially in the backs. Their half depth, maybe not as much. You sort of got Jake Arthur there, who I'm not sold on yet. But speaking of halves at Parramatta, Mitch Moses has just re-signed with the club, which definitely helps them out. It means, they don't have to rely on their halves depth as much as they would have if Mitch Moses left, because obviously if he left, you're probably having to play Jake Arthur at 7, which he's probably not ready to do. So shout out to the Eels. Plenty of depth, plenty of good signs. I thought Josh Hodgson improved on his first trial performance. I think he still has to be better, but I think he definitely improved as well, which is good. And Jermaine Hopgood, he didn't play in the first trial game because he was in the All-Stars game, but he killed it in the All-Stars game, and he killed it in this game as well. If you play fantasy, Jermaine Hopgood, make sure he's in your side, and I'd be tempted to captain him in fantasy. He's doing really good at lock. Obviously, it's only a trial game. You can't get too carried away, but he is looking the goods. And as I said, the Knights, my biggest takeaway was Kalen Ponga's struggles defensively at 5'8". Now, in attack, he wasn't too bad. He had his hand in a trial too, and probably wasn't as involved as you'd like him to be. Like, obviously, they've moved him to 5'8" to be more involved, and I felt he wasn't as involved as you'd expect him to be with a move to 5'8". But nonetheless, attacking-wise, it was a pass, but just his defense, obviously, as I said, they've moved him into the front line, but it's as if they didn't think that he'd also be defending more. And as a fullback, your defense isn't as good as like your traditional 5'8" and your hookers, obviously. So I think him being moved into the defensive line and having to make more tackles, it's definitely something to watch over the season, because it didn't look good on the weekend, but hopefully that's something he can improve. Maybe he's carrying some injuries and wasn't fully confident in defense. I thought Hastings did all right as well. Probably expect a little bit more out of him, but it's only a trial, so I'm sure they'll be right. They've got an easy draw to start the season, the Knights, and I actually expect them to go on a 5-0 run to start the season just based on their draw. So I wouldn't be panicking. I definitely wouldn't be panicking yet. It's only a trial, but another takeaway for the Knights was Lockie Miller at fullback, who they signed from the Sharks. One of the worst kept secrets in the NRL was them signing Lockie Miller, and I thought he did pretty good. In fact, I thought he did better than pretty good. So that is definitely a positive for all the Knights fans out there. Moving on to game number 2, which ended up being the preseason challenge grand final, if you will. It was between Manly and the Roosters, and Manly walked away 28-16 winners after leading 26-0 to start the game, which blew me away. I personally thought the Roosters would win this game, and I thought they'd win it by a lot as well. So I personally was quite surprised to see Manly do as well as they did. And when you look at the team they had, like, they weren't even full strength. They were missing Tom Trbojevic. They were missing Daly Cherry Evans. And they still pulled up this massive win. As I said, it was 26-0 basically. Like, it was 26-0 at halftime. And that's the full strength sides against each other in the second half when the Roosters ended up coming away 16-2 winners in the second half. That's more of a trial game. So you sort of tend to ignore that. But blokes like Ruben Garrick, even Josh Schuster, Cooper Johns again, like, there were so many blokes who had really good games. Kohler was really good. Weeks was good at fullback. Kelma Tuolungi from the Tigers, who's obviously now at Manly, he played good. Ola Kawatu played good. I thought Bullymore off the bench was good. Like, just almost all across the park. They were really good, and I was actually surprised. Obviously, the Bulldogs play in round one, and it's going to be harder to win that game than I thought it was going to be, to be honest. The one thing that does confuse me is them not playing Daly Cherry Evans in the halves with Schuster in this trial. But now it's actually paid off because Schuster's ruled out for round one, which means Cooper Johns will take his place. And Cooper Johns is coming off 2 amazing trial games performances. So his confidence is going to be easily the highest it's been in his entire career. And he gets to partner Daly Cherry Evans come round one. So as a Bulldogs fan, I'm literally scared. Another dude, actually, before we move to the Roosters, Gordon Chen Kum Tong. He actually just got escalated to the top 30 squad. I'm not sure if that was for this year or for 2024, but he is a footballer. He's their hooker. I'd never heard of him before last week, and he's actually just like a high quality player. So shout out to him. And for the Roosters, there's not a lot to say. I thought Brendan Smith played better than he did in his first game. Sandon Smith ended up getting a run with Walker getting ruled out late, but, you know, they weren't full strength to their credit. Like, they were missing Marnie. They were missing both their halves. But you'd still expect them to go a bit better than they did. Moving on to the Saturday games. The first Saturday game was the Charity Shield match between the Rabbitohs and the Dragons. The Rabbitohs won that 42-24. I remember it was like, I don't remember what the score was. What did your Rabbits lead by? Let's have a look. 6, 12, 18, 24, 26. Wow. So they led 32-0 at one stage. And then you'd assume, because I didn't watch it live, I've just seen the mini a couple of times. You'd assume then the Dragons, then the Rabbitohs sort of rested some players. But actually, it doesn't look like they did. So, yeah, 32-0 they led before going on to win 42-24, and they win back the Charity Shield. Latrell Mitchell looked really, really fit. Well, not really, really fit, but fitter than he was last season. And in the All-Stars game as well, I thought he looked fitter than he has been previously. So he's looking ready to rip and tear this season. I thought Walker did well. Isaiah Tass did well. But it was more just a good, solid team performance and just the Rabbitohs coming together and playing this sort of brand of footy. We're coming to know them to play like, you know, Cody Walker being a bit electric and Latrell Mitchell playing at the back of that. I thought they did pretty well, and it was against a Dragons outfit, a very ordinary Dragons outfit, not because they named an average team. They named their full strength team. It's just that the Dragons are not looking the goods heading into 2023. Sloan had a pretty bad game. I thought Hunt was really quiet. They had Little at hooker who went all right, but he's not a world-class hooker by any stretch. There were some positives, like Billy Burns, for example. I thought Murdoch Missila was good. But look, when you look at the other teams in the bottom 8, so obviously they came bottom 8 last year. And then you look at the teams that finished around them. You got Tigers, you got Bulldogs, you got Knights, you got Titans. Like, all these teams have improved based off last year, but the Dragons haven't at all. And I'm not saying that those other teams are going to jump into the 8, because you got to have teams fall out of the 8 to get into the 8. And when you look at the teams in the 8, they've all improved as well. And it looks like nobody's falling out of the 8. But you look at this Dragons lineup, they literally haven't improved at all. In fact, you could say they've downgraded with Ramsey being out, with Amon being out, with Jack Bird being out for the first couple of weeks, I think it's safe to say that this team has actually gone backwards. And like even the Warriors have improved. Like their trial game performances were really impressive. And I'm going to say it right here, right now. I think Dragons get the spoon in 2023. They've got like their team on paper. If you take out Ben Hunt, that's a pretty bad team. And then you put Ben Hunt back in it, and it's like, oh, well, now they can probably push for the finals because Ben Hunt is quite good, and he nearly got the Dally M medal last year in a team that finished outside of the 8, and he had his big redemption in Origin, and he's been killing it. And he's the only reason why I think they might not get the spoon. But even then, when you take into account all the off-field drama that's going on, and Moan's got, criminal charges against him, Cody Ramsey's out with a sickness and his career is in doubt. You've got this like punch on kerfuffle thing that happened in Mudgee on the weekend. It's not looking good for him. And I remember Ben Hunt came out in the World Cup last year, or like towards the start of the World Cup last year, and he literally said that the players know that if they don't perform to start the season, the coach is gone. And I don't see a world in which they come out and start the season well. And so I think that Anthony Griffin is going to get sacked. And here's another hot tip. I think Des Hasler will be coaching the Dragons before round 13. So there's 2 bold predictions for you. I think the Dragons will get the spoon, and I think Des Hasler will start coaching them starting in round 13. Although, to be fair, if Des Hasler takes over, I don't know if they do get the spoon, but they're my 2 bold predictions for the Dragons. I'm sure at least one of them will come true because I'm such an expert and I'm so smart. You know what I mean? All right, let's move on to the next game, which was the World Club Challenge between St. Helens and Panthers. And if this score didn't shock you as a rugby league fan, then you're probably from England, because I did not see this coming at all. I know notable blokes in media like Guru didn't see this coming. Phil Gould didn't see this coming. St. Helens beat Panthers 13-12 in Golden Point. I've actually got a good yarn about this, all right? So I was in Penrith like basically all of Saturday. If you want to know, so I've hurt my wrist bowling or golfing or something in Penrith. I don't know, but that's not the point of the story. The point is I was in Penrith for basically all of Saturday, and I came home and got home in time for the second half of the footy. I'd been listening to it in the car, and then got to watch the second half, sitting there enjoying the footy, watching Panthers come back and make a game of it. Nathan Cleary kicks the goal from the sideline to tie the game, does ice in his veins. And then it went to Golden Point. And maybe 1 or 2 minutes into Golden Point, the fire alarm in my building goes off and we have to evacuate all the way down the stairs. And I live on the top level of my building. So I'm going all the way down the stairs to outside evacuating my building. And there's no phone reception in the elevators or in the stairs. So I'm on my way down the stairs trying to get the game up on my phone. Shout out to Foxtel/KO, not an ad. And I'm trying to get the game up and I can't because there's no reception. And the whole way down, I'm like, bruh, I need to see the score. I need to see the score. I need to see the score. I need to see the game. I don't want to miss the game. I don't want to miss the game. It's in Golden Point. This is the worst timing ever. I'm missing Golden Point of the World Club Challenge. I'm missing Panthers possibly losing the World Club Challenge. I need the game up. I need to get it up before it ends. And then time went on and I couldn't get it up. And I was like, I'd sort of accepted that I'd missed the end. I'm like, by now it would be over. I need to not see the score because I can go back and I can rewatch the end without seeing the score. And it'll just be as if I've watched it for the first time. So I'm like, I can't see the score. I can't see the score. Nobody show me the score. Don't show me the score. And I'm trying to get the game up. And then I got told the score. And I'm not going to name names. I'm not going to shift the blame. I've moved past it. This was 4 days ago and I've moved past it. And I'm not going to cry about it anymore. I'm not saying I didn't cry about it. I did cry about it. But I'm not going to cry about it anymore. So we're not going to point fingers. But somebody, an unnamed person, you know who I'm talking about. You know who you are. Told me the score when I'd been asking not to see the score. And so the game was ruined for me, basically, is the moral of that story. So there's a bit of a yarn for you. But yeah, St. Helens, they were very impressive. I'm not going to go into how well they played because we don't really care about Super League. Although I'll tell you what, we should give them more respect than we do. Like, they just beat our back-to-back premiers, a team that's been to the grand final 3 times, a team that basically nobody's been able to beat in the NRL. Like, the only games Panthers have lost is during Origin or when they're resting players. And then St. Helens just rock up in the middle of summer as well, which they would not be used to. And to be fair, it did rain a lot during the game, which helped St. Helens. But still, like, it's the middle of summer. They've been away from home for 2 weeks because they've been here since the start of the preseason challenge. They just rock up and they just casually beat Panthers by a field goal. Nobody saw that coming. It's just actual insanity. I thought for the Panthers, well, do a little bit of a focus on them. I thought Stephen Crichton at fullback was bang average, which is concerning as a Bulldogs fan because, you know, he's meant to be our fullback next year and he did not look too crash hot at all. Interesting that Taylor May's out for the season with an ACL injury, which you'd assume Taruva ends up getting a spot either on the wing or in the centres. They played him at centre on the weekend, but I'd assume he gets a run on the wing and you leave Crichton at the centre. But there is a chance that Crichton goes to the wing. He was playing fullback in this game because Edwards was out. He was being rested. And then Cleary, he did all right, but I don't like... I thought the ice in the veins thing from Cleary was an interesting decision to do at that moment of the game. Now, I understand if you've kicked a goal to win the game, carry on, please. I love carry on. I love grade 3 carry on. But if you've kicked a goal to tie a game with a couple of minutes on the clock on that big of a stage, knowing that it's probably going to golden point and that the other team definitely still has a chance of beating you, especially considering they've just dominated you for 75 minutes, maybe don't carry on. Maybe don't do it in that situation. And I don't want to complain about him doing it because I do love the carry on, but I just think I'm not complaining about him doing it, but I'm suggesting to you, Cleary, if you're watching, think about the circumstances in which you're carrying on because it just doesn't seem like the right time or place to be doing ice in your veins. Because, like, obviously you went on and lost the game, bro. Now you look like an idiot. Sorry, this mic's being annoying. But, if you've done it when you've just clutched a field goal or clutched a goal to win the game, then you look awesome and you're the best thing ever and T-shirts will be made of you. But if you're doing it and then going on and losing the game, just silly, man. Don't carry on until you've earned the carry on. That's wise words from me. Don't carry on until you've earned a carry on. But otherwise, there's not a whole heap to take out of this game. They lost to St. Helens. Maybe St. Helens are better than we thought. They've won 4 titles in a row in the Super League. I think the moral of the story here is there's 3 morals to this story. Moral number 1, stop sleeping on the Super League. They go all right. Moral number 2, do not carry on if there's still time left on the clock and the other team is still a decent chance of winning the game. And moral number 3, don't tell people the score of a game that they don't want to know the score of the game too. I don't know if that was good English. But anyway, the last game on Saturday was the Broncos and the Cowboys. And another surprise, to me at least, was the Broncos winning this game. Now, they were missing Adam Reynolds and Reece Walsh, and they still went on to win this game. So credit to the Broncos for pulling this off because the Cowboys were basically full strength. And to be fair, the second half was more of a trial game. And, a 2-point margin, you can assume that you can't assume that this is a good indicator of what the Broncos are going to be like in 2023. Like, the score doesn't reflect what the Broncos, where the Broncos are at and where the Cowboys are at. The first half does, and the first half was close as well, to be fair. But I'm just saying, in trial games, it's hard to take things out accurately because, the first grade squads and the good players don't actually always play the full 80 minutes. In fact, it's rare that they do play the full 80 minutes. So it's better to just look at individual performances rather than them as a team over an 80-minute period. Like, you can't look at the score and go, oh, the Broncos bet the Cowboys are going to win the comp. I'm not saying they're not going to win the comp. I'm just saying you can't say those things because it's a trial game. But Selvin Cobbo at fullback, shout out to him. He did well. He scored a try. He had some good moments. I thought he was quite good. Jock Madden was kind of quiet, but I think I'm keen to see how he goes to the Broncos, especially with Adam Reynolds last year. He was in and out of the season with injuries, so it'd be cool to see Jock Madden get a good crack in a better side than what the Tigers were, because at the Tigers, I like Jock Madden. Walters started at 9. He did all right, and then Pakes came off the bench. Obviously, it'll be interesting to see who gets the spot come round 1, because in the first trial, it was Pakes starting with Walters off the bench, and Pakes has just signed a 2-year extension, I think it was. So it'll be interesting to see what direction they go there. I've got Pakes in my fantasy, so that's probably the only reason I've pointed that out. Marty Tapau had a pretty good game, and Paddy Carrigan at lock also had a pretty good game. From the Cowboys, the score doesn't do them justice, I don't think. I thought they were just as good as they were last year. I'm not concerned about them at all, to be honest. I think maybe some people will be concerned or have concerns. This mic's annoying me, eh? I'm just going to have to hold it. I think some people will have concerns because, they lost to the Broncos, but I'm not concerned at all. I thought they did all right. Let's move to the last 4 games of the week. The Storm and the Warriors. Now, this one was interesting because the Warriors were winning 6-0 at halftime, and everyone was like, well, at least I was like, the Warriors are good now. They flogged the Tigers last week, and now they're beating the Storm. Are the Warriors the real deal? And then the footy gods stepped in, and the Storm started playing rugby league football, and the Storm ended up winning 24-6. So maybe the Warriors aren't the real deal. Maybe they're not going to win the comp. I won't rule them out. I personally don't see them making the 8, but I will say that the trial games, they did quite well. I thought I was impressed with their performances through the trial games, and I think they're going to do better this year than I thought before the trial games. So they have impressed me, and even in a 24-6 loss, I thought they were still pretty impressive. You have to keep in mind, this is the Storm, one of the best teams in the comp. So I thought they did all right. I'll tell you who had a cracking game, who did better than all right. Nelson Asafa Solomona. He had a really, really, really good game. He was playing prop. He started at prop. Last year, he was coming off the bench, but in this game, he was the starting number 8. And he had a pretty massive game. But I'll tell you who had a massive game. And I think I'm going to try and do my reacts video on this man this week. It was Will Warbrick. Now, Brick is in his name. This man his name is basically Brick Will or Brick Wall. This man is a brick wall. He was just really, really, really good. He ran for 200 meters. He had 57 post-contact meters. He scored a meat pie. Remember the name Will Warbrick. I reckon he might have played himself into a round 1 spot, to be honest. He was really, really impressive, and I look forward to watching some highlights of him if I can find some for the Reacts video. Because he was almost outstanding, to be honest. He was probably, out of all the rookies in the second week, he was definitely the one that impressed me the most. But speaking of impressing me, the West Tigers beating the Raiders 36-4 in the second game of the Sunday ticket. Incredible. And they trailed 4-0 after 25 minutes and just didn't look like they were in the game. And then they just clicked. And keep in mind, Appy Coruscant wasn't playing this game. John Bateman's not in the country yet, so he wasn't playing this game. And they still killed it. And to be honest, even Isaiah Papali'i, he had a quiet game. It's not like his signing just made them into superstars. It was genuinely the blokes from last year playing good football. The Wooden Spooners played good football. And that's probably a reflection on the coaching, I guess. But I thought they were really good. I thought David Nofaluma, he looked the exact same as he did when he won Winger of the Year a couple of years ago. His time in Melbourne has clearly lit something up inside of him, and he's actually come back to the Tigers wanting to play football. And he's playing reserve grade for the Tigers last year, so it's a big turnaround for him. He looked really good, and I'd assume he gets a spot come round one. I thought Adam Dewey started bad, but then he just got into his rhythm and just played really well. And just overall, just as a team, I thought they were good. I thought the Raiders, on the other hand, they looked pretty ordinary. I don't understand what's doing there because they looked like they hadn't played much together, but it's basically the same team as last week. Like there's no new signings trying to gel into this side, but the way they play, it looks like there is. I don't know, like what's going on. I'm not concerned about them though, to be honest. But I don't know. They just seemed a bit rattled, maybe by the Tigers coming out and playing good footy. I don't know. The Raiders seemed a bit below average, in my opinion. We got 2 games to go in this review, and we're up to the most important game. The Sharks beating the Bulldogs 36-16. Now, before I get into the Bulldogs, let's have a look at what I liked about the Sharks. I thought Hines, he showed why he's the reigning Dalian medalist. It wasn't even raining. In fact, it was really, really hot. It was like 30 degrees. So his hair was probably the driest it's ever been, and he still put on a clinic. Now, obviously, like, he plays better when his hair is wet. So, like, this was a man playing with dry hair, and he killed it. So imagine him with wet hair this year. He played really good, and as I said, you can see why he's the reigning Dalian medalist. Nico Hines just gets rugby league football, and as much as I hate seeing the Bulldogs lose, it's so cool to watch Nico Hines play because it reminds me of watching Jonathan Thurston play. Now, I'm not comparing Nico Hines to Jonathan Thurston. I'm not saying he's not nearly on the same level as Jonathan Thurston. Don't get me wrong, but I'm just saying, like, going to the game and watching him in person, he has like the same presence as JT. Maybe it's because he's hot. I don't know, but it's just cool to like go and see him play because he's got a presence about him. And things just happen for him in slow motion, it feels like. So shout out to Nico Hines. But I don't want to talk too much about the Sharks because the team I want to talk about is the Doggies. Now, let's dissect these guys one by one. I'm going to start with, this mic giving me all sorts of dramas, eh? Bro, just sit in there. Hayes Perham at fullback was not, I'm going to say it, he wasn't good. Attack me in the comments if you think I'm wrong, but Hayes Perham, he was not good. And based on his performance in this game and the performance in the All-Stars a couple of weeks ago, I would not be picking him in round 1, to be honest. I'd be picking Braden Burns or Declan Casey. Like, I can't believe he's spent a whole preseason at fullback, and that's where he's at as a player. Look, I'm actually concerned. It concerns me not just on a Hayes Perham level, but as a club level, because last week against the Raiders, the Bulldogs looked so good and so well coached, but then they came out this week. And like even like Matt Burton was really quiet. Kyle Flanagan wasn't as nearly as good as he was against the Raiders. Reed Marnie had a shocker. I just don't understand what's happened from the Raiders game to the Sharks game, because the Raiders game, they looked like a brand new team that had improved on so many levels. And then they rock up this week and they look like they've gone backwards. Like, when you look at the Mick Potter coached Bulldogs of round 25, and then you look at the team that rolled out against the Sharks, and it's only a trial game, I know, but I don't know, man. All the positivity I took out of the Raiders game, it's all gone. And now I'm just back at hope. I'm just hoping that this was a one-off and that round 1 against Manly, we're going to roll out the same way we did against the Raiders, or the same way that the Bulldog fans imagine we're going to be with all these new signings, because it wasn't a great performance by any stretch. Like, Josh Adokar was quiet. Paul Alamotti was all right, but he wasn't in rookie of the year form. As I said, Burden was quiet. I thought Jake Averillo, he was outstanding at center. He competed on every play. He had a bit of a brouhaha with Mulatalo, which you love to see getting under his skin. And I thought Jake Averillo was probably our best player, to be honest. So that is a positive to take out of the game, that his move to center is looking like a good move, to be fair. And I love Jake Averillo. And I thought him at fullback, I didn't even predict him playing fullback. I called for him to play fullback before he was playing fullback. Like, I love him at fullback, but I don't think moving him to fullback is the right option. I think he's killing it at center. Like last week and this week, he played really well at center. And with Crichton coming to play fullback, it's just dumb moving Averillo back to fullback just for a season, just for him to move back to the centers anyway. I think just leave Averillo at center, keep the fullback seat warm for Crichton, and then Averillo can have an extra year to develop as a center, which after one preseason, he's looking pretty good. So imagine him with a whole extra year heading into 2024. I think it's exciting times for Averillo. I hope we can re-sign him. The forwards were right. I thought Kikau, he got hurt early. He got concussed early and went off, but he scored a try and he was really good. I had concerns about Kikau actually coming into the season. I thought maybe he was going to be Dylan Napa vibes and would only be at our club for a paycheck. He played a few seasons at Panthers and he's won a couple of comps. And I thought, maybe now he's just coming for a holiday and a paycheck. But he seemed to buy in and he had a good game, I thought. Outside of Averillo, the man who had the best game, Josh Reynolds, again. I said it after his game against the Raiders that he just looked like he looks like he's been playing for the Bulldogs as if he never left. Like, it's a cliche saying, he's back like he never left, or it's like he never left. It's a cliche, but it's genuinely true. He looks like he has not missed a season of NRL for the Bulldogs. I just can't believe how good he is considering, his form in the Super League, and he hasn't played in a couple of years and he had a bad stint at the Tigers, but he just looks like he's a 33-year-old veteran. He does not look like he's had to relearn the game or that he's worse than he was in 2014 when he won Origin and stuff. I think he's earned himself a round one spot. I really do. His try back at Belmore was one of the greatest things ever too, hey? It was just so, so good. The fans erupted. The Belmore game, I went to the game and it was just exactly what I hoped it would be. It was so full, especially for a trial game. And then the crowd was chanting his name. And when he got up off the bench, the whole crowd went up, and he went on the field and the whole crowd went up. Every time he got near the sideline, the Reynolds chants would go up. When he's on the field, lining up for a kickoff, the fans closest to him would just be chanting his name. And then he scored the try. And it was like we'd won the premiership. So I cannot wait for round 3 against the Tigers. I really, really hope he gets a run. That's all I can dream about, hey, that Reynolds plays against the Tigers round 3. Because if that's what it was like atmosphere-wise for a trial game, I can't begin to imagine what it will be like round 3 against the Tigers, assuming Reynolds plays. Also, just want to give a quick shout out to Jacob Preston of Preston Mania fame. He did really well again. He was named in the number 21, so I wasn't sure what was doing there. But then Kikau got hurt and Preston went on. So it looks like Preston will get a spot in the 17 come round 1. So shout out to Preston Mania. And then before we wrap up this podcast, the Dolphins and the Titans played the last game of the preseason. The Titans winning that game 40-16. Aaron Schopp, Bulldogs legend, NRL hot boy, Aaron Schopp. He did play quite well. In fact, he played really well. It hurt to see he even scored a try. I miss Aaron Schopp. Jojo Fafita on the wing. He had both wingers as well. Khan Pereira actually had a good game as well. Look, Brimo was all right at fullback. Foran was quiet at 5'8". He was all right. Obviously, he's not a big stats guy. He's just to get you around the park, put you in the right space, dig into the line kind of bloke. he doesn't get the stats that reflect his performance, but I thought he played pretty good. I thought Tanner Boyd played really good at halfback. Verrills was good at hooker. I thought for feeder, he showed glimpses of, the player he can be and the reason Titans paid him all the money to play at the Titans. I thought, yeah, he was impressive. And overall, there's improvement there at the Gold Coast. I think they're being slept on a little bit. If Foran stays healthy, which is a big ask, because he does have a history of not playing football outside of Manly, but if he can stay healthy, I think the Titans you may not see the improvement on the ladder, but you will see improvement just as a team. I think the Titans are being slept on a little bit. And then the Dolphins, I think as we get closer to the season, people are starting to go, maybe the Dolphins aren't going to come last. There's plenty of potential at the Dolphins. Maybe the Dolphins will go all right, but they didn't look great in this trial game, to be honest. And that I think after this trial game, everyone's back to where they were when the Dolphins were first announced to come into the comp. Will they get the wooden spoon? Will they fail to deliver results for the first couple of years? Are they in trouble? Now, I don't think they're going to get the spoon, but they did look they didn't look bad, but they looked average. I thought Sean O'Sullivan, he was really good, but like Milford, no good. They're back five, which is what concerns me. If you look at their forward pack, I'm fine with their forward pack. In fact, I'd almost say it's in the top 8 forward packs in the game. Like their forward pack is pretty decent. I think Jeremy Marshall-King at hooker had a quiet game, but if he can tap into what he did last year at the Bulldogs, like he'll be fine. But yeah, they're back 5. Jack Bostock, Tessie New, Branko Lee, Robert Jennings, and Hammer at fullback. They were all quiet. And Hammer, you could almost argue that he was their biggest signing heading into the season. He was quiet. It is just a trial game, but he was quiet. I thought Jack Bostock was probably the best player out of the back 5. And he's like the player you've heard of the least. Like everyone knows Tessie New and Branko Lee and Robert Jennings. Nobody knows who Jack Bostock is, and he's the best player in the back 5. So I think there definitely should be concerns around the Dolphins, but I'm still keen to see how they go round 1, especially up against the Roosters. That'll be interesting. They actually have a documentary coming out on Stan, I think early March, Dawn of the Dolphins. That looks really, really interesting. So I'm keen to watch that. But yeah, otherwise, that's it for this week's podcast. Just a cheeky review session. I'll be back next week. We'll do a big dive into round 1 and into all sorts of news and all that good stuff. Thank you for listening. This is the Dog Dish. I actually might have some news in terms of this being the Dog Dish coming next week. So keep your eyes peeled on that. Follow the socials. The Dog Dish on Instagram, Winston.Neville on YouTube and Facebook, YouTube and TikTok. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe if you're on YouTube. Follow the podcast if you're on Spotify or Apple. Leave a review if you're on Apple. I'll see you next week. Let's try it.